Hi, Black Hollywood Live fans. Today on Justice is Served, we're talking Kim and Kanye versus Taylor Swift and more.
Southside niggas that know me best, I feel like me and Taylor might still have sex. Why? I made that bitch famous. I made that bitch famous.
Oh man, oh man. Well, thanks to Kanye for that beautiful intro and the great story that follows, the great legal story that follows that. Welcome to Justice is Served. My name is Chelsea Galicia. I'm an attorney here with my co-host Shaka Smith, also an attorney, and we're going to give you the latest on the legal stories of the week, starting with the inspiration for that song. I guess Taylor Swift was I don't know. It's like a muse to Kanye. Or, I don't know. But it's fun when we get to talk about them in a legal realm, when these catfights escalate to something legal, and we get to talk about it here. So apparently, and I feel like a little bit out of it because being in Europe on a boat for a week,
Oh, you missed the major news, yeah.
So I come back and I see that Kim releases a snippet of a video where Taylor Swift appears to be approving of the very song that we just heard.
Yeah, famous, yeah.
And which would go up against Taylor Swift saying, I didn't approve of that song.
Yeah, a couple of months ago, we had the song come out, and Taylor kind of came out against the song. And when she delivered her acceptance speech, I forget what award show it was, at the award show, she talked about other artists taking credit on the name of other people. And so she was referencing Kanye, and a sort of beef had arisen. And Kanye went back and said, wait a minute, I got approval from Taylor. And so he didn't know where that was coming from. As we know, in California, it's illegal to tape a confidential communication. And so that seemed to be the reason that Kanye had not released Taylor's approval. But
apparently he hadn't passed that message along to his wife.
Yeah, I don't know if, or maybe if she got some legal counsel and said, forget about it, let's go to Snapchat. But so Kim releases the audio where it does seem to appear that Taylor Swift approves of these lyrics.
But the clip that was approved, or that was shared with the public, was a very short clip, and the conversation was about an hour or so long.
Well, Taylor does, so she, in defense of her non-approval, she says, I never said the words, that bitch. Where did I approve that bitch? She put it on her Instagram.
So that's the only part of the whole thing that she objects to?
That's what she's saying now. Of course, at the time, it was an objection to all of it. But this clearly shows she, at the very least, she knew who was going to reference them having sex, which you would think would be almost the more objectionable.
Yeah, that was pretty bizarre.
Yeah, that's actually a very personal thing.
Right, because when I heard her say, oh yeah, that sounds good, I was like, what?
Whereas that bitch is sort of kind of more commonplace in music, you know. Yeah, at least, you know, in hip-hop music, referencing someone as a bitch is very commonplace, whereas saying we might still have sex would seem to be more offensive.
Yeah.
But when you read the transcript, there's a part of the transcript where Taylor lets him know, well, you can use any line you'd like. And we don't hear the other line that she's referring to. And later on in the transcript, she says something like, she says exactly, it's awesome that you're so outspoken about this, and be like, yeah, she does. It made her famous. It's more provocative to say, might still have sex because. So she acknowledges, even in the transcript, this line about being more famous, that something made her famous. Where, though he does not explicitly say the line to her, that bitch, I think, given the fact that that's part of the same line.
Well, wasn't also part of the deal is that he was supposed to send her a copy of the song before it was released, and he didn't do that?
Well, that's what she's saying. However, we don't have any proof of that. And it seems like she's heard at least another line or two of the song. So where did she hear that? Did she hear that through a copy she did in fact receive, or did she hear it from Kanye? But either way, the question was, were they now going to be on the hook for releasing this recording of a confidential communication?
So the laws on this vary state by state, but in California, it requires both parties.
Two-party consent.
Right. So the only exception to that is if one of the parties has like a reasonable... It's like reasonable to know or suspect that there's other people listening in.
And
like,
so confidential requires you to believe that the conversation you are having is private. If you believe it's a public conversation that can be overheard by other people, then it's no longer a confidential communication, which would take Kanye out of being in any violation of the law.
And some people were quick to say, well, but there were other people in the studio with Kanye. I don't know where he was at the time, but there was other people there, and she should have she knew that there were other people there. Therefore, she had no sort of like expectation of privacy.
Yeah, it's been reported by people that have listened to the entire tape that Rick Rubin, another producer, jumps in on the conversation. You can overhear on the tape other people that are filming Kanye for this documentary that he was filming. They're also speaking on the tape. So Taylor Swift knew that, and she knew she was on speakerphone. So she knew she wasn't having just a personal, private conversation with Kanye.
And then I have seen the other side where she didn't know she was on speaker.
No, the full tape reveals that she was on speaker.
Oh, well, then what I heard ignores that part. So in this, it seems to me you're sort of Team Kanye.
Yeah, I mean, it does look that she absolutely approved these lyrics, and certainly they're not in any, there's no legal ramifications for having released it.
So the law, what is not on her side, you think? You think she didn't have any reasonable expectation sort of privacy because there were other people on this call?
Yeah, given the fact that Rick Rubin jumps in, given the fact that on the call you can actually hear other people that are filming this documentary talk.
But I thought that only a small portion of this was released. So
Only a small portion of it was released, but some news outlets have heard the entire tape.
got it. Okay. So,
I'm going to ask you guys something.
okay,
Yeah.
please. That's Steven, our engineer.
And I'm not really going to choose teams in this train of thought. What if Taylor gave them permission to put the Snapchat out?
Well, then we would have zero story to talk about.
I don't even mean that. I just mean, obviously she has case for a lawsuit here, but she hasn't filed charges. She would have been prepared to file charges. I mean, they aired the episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, which is solely based on this that they taped months ago.
Well, she didn't file those charges because it was not a confidential communication. So any attorney that she went to would have told her, look, this doesn't fall in the realm of confidential communication because based on what I've heard, you knew that other people were listening into the conversation.
But my question is, from the start, from her and Kanye's relationship together, it's been very abrupt media talking about outrage with one team versus another team. From the VMA Awards, where he originally grabbed the mic out of her hand, and every other confrontation between these two people.
Yeah.
To a certain point that I kind of, at some point, have to believe that some of this is pre-planned.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that one.
And I think that was the issue. I think what we had with Kanye and Taylor kind of did have a plan because she mentions on the call that it's going to be provocative that she'll be on the Grammy red carpet and let people know she was in on this the entire time, except that part never happened. So she does say it'll be wonderful if people think I wasn't a part of it, and then I get to actually go out in public and let them know, oh no, this was a plan from the beginning. And she just kind of, I guess, reneged on that part of the idea.
But I think it's going to be that again. I think it's going to be this was the plan from the beginning.
It could be, but
Maybe.
But I think in any event, it certainly did make Taylor Swift more famous, and this is making her more famous. But I think she's got a lot of bad press and a bad backlash from it.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised and not in a good way about Taylor Swift with this whole story, especially now that you're telling me that she actually absolutely did know. I did not know that people had heard the rest of the audio because I had read that she was still considering pressing charges, and you can press charge both criminally and civilly.
Yeah.
For criminal, it's actually called a wobbler, so it could be a misdemeanor or a felony based on how egregious it was. I can't imagine that this would be a felony level eavesdropping case. And the civil damages are really about 3 times whatever economic damages it cost Taylor Swift, which is pretty hard to measure, and it may not have damaged her at all. It may have helped her.
It may have helped, but at this point, the backlash has been swift. But so we'll see where her career goes after this. But it was certainly an interesting.
I mean, even if she won civilly and they couldn't calculate her economic losses, it would be like $5,000. So this would all be a publicity stunt because $5,000 is not going to make a difference to anybody in this group of people. So I think that this is probably going to be the end of it. I don't think we're going to cover this again because we hear that files were charges or complaint was filed. And
I doubt there will be any charges.
This is the end. They have juiced this story to
it's
the max.
End legally, but I'm sure there'll be plenty in the news.
There you go. All right, let's move on to another officer in the Freddie Gray death was acquitted earlier this week. This time, Judge Barry Williams, who is the same judge that's heard the 3 prior cases for the other 3 officers that have already been tried, acquitted Lieutenant Brian Rice. And he solely acquitted him because this was another bench trial Lieutenant Rice opted to have the judge alone decide this case rather than going to a jury. And he was acquitted.
We had the 3 charges: involuntary manslaughter,
Yeah.
reckless endangerment, misconduct in office. And this is the guy that shackled Freddie Gray's legs and did not put the seatbelt on him.
And it was like the highest ranking person there.
Yeah.
He was the lieutenant there. He was on a bike patrol that morning.
Yeah.
When Freddie Gray ran for
He orders 2 officers to follow Freddie Gray on a bicycle.
no reason.
No reason whatsoever. The guy, Freddie Gray was running, but there was no reason to actually be running after him.
So it's surprising to me. I mean, I guess it can't be that surprising to me. This many trials in and this many acquittals in.
But I found the words of the judge pretty shocking.
Yes, the rationale was really unbelievable to me. He basically said that the prosecution didn't prove that Lieutenant Rice knew that he had to strap him in.
Yeah, so we had a new policy, and the new policy, because of the serious injury that could be caused when you don't...
Because the city of Baltimore had millions of dollars go out to other people who had been injured in these rough ride situations.
Exactly, and so there's
This
a new
lieutenant
policy.
didn't know.
And the judge is acquitting him, saying, they did not show that he was aware of this new policy. But we know that when you have a duty, you don't need to be aware of the duty. A duty arises because of because of the situation you're in.
Yeah, he said the court, quote, cannot be swayed by sympathy, prejudice, or public opinion, and in my opinion, can't be swayed by common sense.
Yeah.
This one really, frankly, pisses me off, and it really is a miscarriage of justice, I think.
Yeah, and
it doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, and just the elements of involuntary manslaughter, just in case people don't know why we're so incensed about it. It's an accidental killing. So that we have what looks to be an accident, and an unlawful act or a negligent act that causes that accident, or negligently failing to perform a legal duty. So all you need is an accidental killing and negligently performing to perform a legal duty. Now, how does a judge determine this officer does not have a legal duty to strap Freddie Gray in when that is part of the new policies designed to keep people from dying or serious injury?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's beyond me.
Right, there was some reference to they shackled him, they put him in the van, laying down on his stomach because they say he was
combative.
Exactly. So it was too difficult to put him on the bench. Either way, put him on a bench or laying him down when you're riding around for a long time in the manner that had to have been driving in order for him to sustain these injuries. Because we never heard specifically about how Officer Nero, was it Nero or Porter? Can't remember these. I can't keep these guys straight. The driver.
Oh, okay.
Exactly how he was driving, but it only makes sense that there had to be something rough in order to cause these kinds of injuries. And then the judge was harping on the fact that the medical evidence showed that the injury to his neck, to his spine, occurred sort of instantaneously during one big hit, that this wasn't something that slowly, gradually came on. Like, that makes a difference.
Yeah. It's just ridiculous to me. The fact that the judge, I mean, I could even see the scenario where you say he's too combative to put on the seatbelt, but the judge didn't stop there. The judge didn't say that, and then you have to prove that the circumstances were such that it was impossible to put the seatbelt on him. But the judge didn't stop there. He said the requirement was that they didn't show he was aware of these new policies, and that to me is just a miscarriage of justice. It's not any part of the law that I know where you have a duty. The duty does not require that you have actual knowledge.
Yeah, and I guess we should have seen this coming earlier this month. The judge granted a defense motion to toss out 2 of the charges that had originally been brought. One for assault, claiming that the van was the weapon in the assault, which had to have been. That got thrown out, and then the misconduct in office charge got dropped.
And we had reckless endangerment, which I thought, okay, if you don't get involuntary manslaughter, certainly reckless endangerment, you engage in conduct that creates a substantial risk of injury or death. Not strapping someone in and putting them in leg shackles.
It just makes no sense. His death was ruled a homicide, and then nobody killed him.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand that there are such things as legal fictions, but we're getting a little carried away with that. There are some people calling for the charges against the remaining officers to be dropped because all the other officers have been acquitted or one had a hung jury. Do you think that the rest of the charges for the other officers should be dropped, or we should continue forward with these trials?
I mean, almost personally, I think they should be dropped just to spare anyone any hope of, possible justice in this case. It's almost cruel to pretend as if we have this legal system that's supposed to work when it just has not been. It's been completely failing Freddie Gray.
Yeah, I feel mixed feelings about it. For better or worse, I think we have to go through this whole pomp and circumstance.
Yeah, in actuality, we need to try to,
because at least maybe it'll be in officers' minds in the future that they'll at least face a trial.
I don't know, especially with this particular judge. You already kind of know the outcome, because why would he want to then kind of overturn essentially his own precedent in this case? But it's important for the process and the system that we go forward. But it's obviously just a cruel fiction that there's any justice to be had here.
Yeah. In other not so great news, we had police officers in Baton Rouge who were killed. So while I was gone, we had the Dallas officers killed, and then a similar style sort of execution of police officers in Baton Rouge by a lone gunman. And as tragic as that is, it gets another step of tragedy is that the blame has been sort of assigned by many people to the Black Lives Matter movement for being anti-cop, which is not something I believe that they are. And in a moment where everybody, the whole nation, we had seen Alton Sterling, and then just days later, Philando Castile, and everybody for a moment seemed to be like, oh shoot, I mean, maybe there is, I'm sorry, that was a bad term there to say, oh shoot, but I mean, this is something serious here. These two stories are pretty crystal clear, and everybody was appalled. I mean, that was a sense that I got. People seemed to understand what the Black Lives Matter movement was saying, and then these officers are killed, and now it's undone any progress of the consciousness of people to understand the Black Lives Matter movement, why they're doing it, and what their position is, because now this one movement has caused two lone gunmen to kill police officers. These two gunmen were not part of Black Lives Matter.
But I don't know if it chills the movement to that degree. The shooting in Dallas is reprehensible. It's not anything that you ever want to see come out from any side or because of any movement. But what I do think it created outrage on another side, and that outrage has led to conversations about what's really underlying what's taking place. So I do feel that there has been a richer conversation brought about as a result of it. We're talking about Blue Lives Matter, we're talking about Black Lives Matter, but I think people are engaging that wouldn't have otherwise engaged. I think while there was outrage about Black Lives Matter, the same people that were exhibiting outrage were the people that cared all along. But now we're getting people coming back about Blue Lives Matter, but having a conversation with people and going, how do we stop this violence? What really brought it on? But then you have the people that,
Yeah, to me, what the bummer was, for me, I felt that it moved the movement backwards.
Yeah, I didn't actually have that sentiment, because I really did feel that we had a day or two of Black Lives Matter. Everyone seemed to be on the same page.
Yeah.
But I already knew the way the news cycle works and the way people in general tend to work is that these things get forgotten. We forgot things after Trayvon. We forgot things after Freddie Gray. We've forgotten things after Michael Brown. So we had some small changes, but I don't think we were engaging with each other a dialogue about what's taking place in our country. And I see more of a dialogue happening.
To me, it seems a blame. It's a two-sided. You're either for the cops, against the cops. You're either for Black Lives Matter or against it, which I think is ridiculous, because I think a reasonable intellectual person can say, I am for the cops, 99.9% of the good cops, and I want somebody to do something to fish out those 1%, 0.01%. I really don't know the number, but I do know that it's a small number of cops who commit these crimes.
Yeah.
And I do think that there are many times that Black people are stopped, arrested, mistreated, whether or not they're, disrespectful, maybe in some cases, maybe not in other cases. Sometimes I understand the officer's decision to act in a certain way, many times that I don't. So I think you can look at them on a case-by-case basis and see sometimes Black Lives Matter movement is correct about the angle of the police, and sometimes the police are correct. We can see both of those.
Yeah.
They can both be true, and it doesn't have to be one or the other.
Yeah, I think we're getting to that point now. I think we were missing that part of the conversation because I think a lot of people there was no outrage on the other side. So a lot of people were hearing things but letting them fall deafly.
And then the other part that really gets me is that there are people saying, well, it doesn't matter what the police are doing to Black lives because Black lives are killing other Black lives, and that's where the focus should be, this Black on Black crime. Well, if you look at the numbers, the white on white crime is not so impressive either.
And it completely misses the point. That's not what the Black Lives Matter movement was about. It was about systemic racism and the killing of Black youths and no justice being had. It wasn't, here's an officer that killed a white officer that killed a Black guy and the white officer went to jail as a result. It was, here's a white officer killing a black person for what we believe is no legal reason, and that they are not being prosecuted or sent to jail. So it wasn't just the killing itself, it was the fact that there was no justice afterwards.
Right. So are you hearing in the dialogue now anybody coming up with solutions?
I do. I mean, Hillary Clinton has already kind of proposed some sort of national standards for police.
Do tell.
Yeah, so the latest I heard of is she's proposed some national standards for police and how they deal with people and effectuate stops. And I think you do need some national standards. So at the very least, you can't say, well, here's a lieutenant who wasn't aware of the new policy and let that be an out for not convicting them. And so to me, I don't know why we haven't had some sort of national standard for our police.
Yeah, well, because so many departments and states are all like, let the decisions be up to the states, the counties, the cities.
And I understand, different localities have to operate differently. If I'm living out in swamplands, or maybe certain protocols I might have differently than living out in a desert. And I think we do need to leave a lot of that to our different local governments. But I think there needs to be some sort of standard of care nationally that police need to have.
I think by now our psychological testing should be sophisticated enough that we can weed these guys out during the academy, because some of them come in with these massive egos already. Yeah. And I think you can tell that coming from a mile away. A lot of these people these officers involved in these incidents, they had had long instances of complaints against them.
It's a self-selecting profession. So, if you're someone that feeds off of power and wants to abuse it, that might be where you decide to apply. And so you're going to have naturally more people that apply to that kind of job as opposed to another type of job. But they do need to up their standards of who are we letting into the police force? Are there some certain mental and psychological reviews that take place every 2 to 4 years or 6 years?
Yeah.
I mean, these are
I would imagine also that the officers, once they're in, they're seeing things, they're experiencing things, the day-to-day grind gets to them. Are we providing them enough support so that they can be of sound mind?
Yeah, and even that support where they deal with the community in a very collaborative way.
But the problem is that everybody say, well, where's the money for that going to come from? Where's the money? Where's the money? We have no money. I disagree with that totally, because I think there is money. We can pull it from our military. We can pull it from corporate welfare. There's lots of sources of money that could pay for this.
Or the job that, is a public profession type of job, maybe tax breaks, tax credits. Like, there are things that can be done to incentivize people to join the police force without kind of giving the incentive of, here's power, abuse it at your whim.
Yeah. Oh, man, that was a good idea. Yeah. We should call somebody about that.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's unfortunate that what we're living in, but I do believe that it's because we have this beautiful tool of social media that's exposing so much of what we did not see. Yeah. So I don't think we're going back by any means. I think we're seeing things we never saw before, and now we're able to collectively kind of move past them, heal them, find solutions.
Except when we have prosecutions like the Freddie Gray.
Oh, it's gonna be some time until we get to that, like 20, 30 years, where we get to a place that we thought we might have been 5 years ago.
Where there's actually fair trials.
Yeah, where we thought we were 5 years ago will truly be another 30 years.
Oh man, that's
disheartening, but
yeah, slightly. And this week has been interesting. That has been a bit of a slower legal news week, probably because this is the week of the RNC.
Yeah.
And it's really fascinating how politics and the law, collide on weeks like this. And so certainly any of those stories, the claims that people Trump is making or that Hillary make about the approach for policing, it will be, and our reforms for our justice system will be definitely something we're looking for to talk about. I haven't heard anything substantive from any of the Trump speeches so far this week that are worth, anything substantive, period, much less anything on criminal justice reform, policing, except that, support the police, support the police.
Well, I think that first debate will start to at least hear from our candidates what they plan to do about this issue, because it's not an issue that's going to go away between now and November. And so I look forward to hearing some of those detailed plans.
Yeah, all right, me too. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our short but sweet show this week. Thank you for joining us on Justice is Served. Please make sure to like, comment. You can tweet us at me at Chelsea Galicia, Shaka at Shaka Strong, and come back next week for another episode of Justice is Served.
From executives Keven Undergaro, Dario Kristen, Tiana Hobson, and the entire BHL staff, we would like to thank you for supporting Black Hollywood Live, the first online broadcast network dedicated to African American entertainment. For questions and comments, contact us. info@blackhollywoodlive.com. Like us on Facebook, tweet us, or Instagram us at BHL Online. And I am the official voice of Black Hollywood Live, Scipio. Instagram me at KingXOBay. Thanks for tuning in.
Hollywood Redefined.
The views expressed here are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of BHL or its owners or principals.